budget, it could only guarantee that 5% had been properly spent. This is not a surprise. In September 2002, an independent examination of EU accounting systems found that basic financial records are not being kept, double-entry bookkeeping is not the norm, advances are recorded as expenditure, which is fraudulent, and cash and bank balances are not being reconciled. The report concluded that no figures produced by the EU can be relied on in any respect. The EU accounting system itself is fraudulent. It can never comply with international or UK accounting systems, and it would prompt an immediate fraud prosecution in the UK. It is now widely recognised that the forthcoming EU constitution is a threat to Britain's sovereignty, and that the British people should decide in a referendum whether or not it should be ratified. The government dismissed such claims, stating that the constitution was merely a tidying up exercise. In fact, if ratified, the EU constitution means a seismic change in the relationship between the European Union and member states. Former French President Valéry Giscard d'Estaing was asked to find ways of simplifying the EU and making it more democratic, more transparent and more effective, but has taken this as a license to create a brand new constitution. There has been no consultation with the electorates. There is no provision for the people to give their views or vote on the proposals, or most importantly, to say whether or not they want such a constitution. No, most of this has been settled privately between politicians over quiet lunches, like the one Blair had with Giscard d'Estaing in February of 2003. The Times reported that the Prime Minister had conceded further abandonment of the national veto, and most, if not all, of the crucial changes now included in the final draft. All settled at a private lunch, without a single word uttered in Westminster, no consultation with the British electorate, and little or no public announcement at the time. The deceit continues. 4 months later, this grossly undemocratic process was completed, and the Convention published its final draft. They have created a constitution for a federal state, within which nations such as Britain become local states, provinces or regions. There are 59 articles in the constitution. The relationship between the EU and the member states changes with this document. Total power will now reside in Brussels, where the bureaucrats can do more or less what they like. Here are just a few of the recommendations. Article 6 declares, "The Union shall have legal personality. The EU will be a sovereign state on the international stage and able to make binding agreements on Britain's behalf without consulting us. This huge transfer of power from Westminster to Brussels will create a new EU diplomatic and military capability under the control of EU appointees. For the first time, there will be a, quote, common EU foreign and security policy, covering all areas of foreign policy, including a common defence policy, which will lead to a common defence, close quote. This is another name for an EU army. There will be a Foreign Affairs Council and an appointed EU Foreign Minister. France and Germany have already recommended the German politician Joschka Fischer for this role. This means that the UK is to be neutered and will no longer have a distinct and separate voice on foreign affairs. Article 8 makes us all citizens of the Union, whether we want to be or not. This will be additional to national citizenship, not replacing it. But national citizenship is bound to disappear in time, as discrimination on the grounds of nationality is prohibited. This means that foreign nationals will be able to apply for employment in Britain and stand in British elections, even though they are of a different culture, have little experience of life in Britain, or are unable to speak the language. National citizenship, along with national identity, will wither and die. The Constitution proclaims that every citizen shall enjoy the rights and be subject to the duties provided for in this Constitution. Yet the duties of EU citizenship have never been revealed. Economic and monetary union is strengthened, giving the Union power to promote economic cohesion among member states and to coordinate their economic, employment and social policies. In addition, member states must coordinate their economic policies within the Union. Compliance with these articles will make it impossible for Britain to maintain an independent monetary policy. The UK will be forced to adopt the euro. Article 10 states that union law shall have primacy over the law of member states. National parliaments will be able to make local laws only as the EU permits. Power is conferred on the Union by national governments, in our case Westminster. We are expected to hand over areas of governance or competence to the EU. The power of Brussels over our lives will then be almost total. Two more articles virtually make it so. Article 17 states that if action should prove necessary to attain one of the objectives set by this Constitution, and the Constitution has not provided the necessary power, the European Council shall take the appropriate measures. In other words, it can do what it likes. And Article 24 allows the European Council to introduce qualified majority voting, if it thinks fit, in areas now decided by unanimity. This means the end of the national veto. New EU governmental procedures and posts are being introduced. The European Council will now select a full-time president every 2.5 years. This is a new post. It means the present 6-monthly presidency held by each member state in turn is replaced by a bureaucrat secure in his post for at least 30 months. The European Council will select the President of the Commission, and the President of the Commission will then select 13 voting commissioners and 13 non-voting commissioners. This means that for 5 years out of 10, Britain will not have a voting commissioner. We will have even less influence than we do now over decisions directly affecting us. Articles 5 and 10 require Britain to take all appropriate measures